Okay, right. So just a general introduction to PubMed. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with what PubMed contains, but just to summarize, really, PubMed is a database of more than 36 million records. So searching it efficiently is quite is a necessary skill, I think, with that many records. It contains Medline, which is obviously biomedical literature, but it also contains other information. It contains life science journals and also online books. So PubMed is sort of bigger than Medline alone. Within PubMed records, you have a variety of searchable fields. And when you're trying to search PubMed with a particular objective in mind, I think it's helpful to know what the best fields are to use for your searches. And I think the most useful fields for most of us, particularly from the perspective of evidence synthesis, are the title and the abstract, the author keywords field, which is where keywords applied by authors to articles are recorded, subject headings, the mesh headings, and publication types, but also the supplementary concept information, also known as substances, which contains information about substances, but also new concepts that are not yet in the main mesh indexing. I'm going to cover just a few topics today, but the PubMed is a complex interface and there's a lot going on and it has lots of facilities. So if you're interested in more information about particular aspects of PubMed, there are all sorts of very nice training options on the PubMed site. And I've given you a link there so you can look at them. And some of them have quizzes and so on as well, so you can test your knowledge. One of the crucial things about PubMed is that it's been designed to help naive searchers. It's been designed to help people who aren't very experienced in searching. So if you type in search terms, PubMed will do a lot of the searching automatically for you. So it's really important to know that when PubMed is encountering a search term, it will go away and unless you control what happens, it will go away and search in very specific ways on the terms that you've entered into it. So it has something called automatic term mapping built into its software, where it looks for alternative terms for the words that you've put in and looks for inbuilt links and mappings. So if you don't control what happens, PubMed will try and help you out. So for example, in this search here on the right-hand side, I've typed in breast cancer, and you can see in the expansion that it's actually taken those terms and mapped them onto quite a large number of other terms. So you can see it's searched for breast neoplasms as subject headings. It's searched for the word breast and the word neoplasms in all of the fields. It's also searched for the phrase breast neoplasms in all of the fields. And it's also searched for breast cancer in all of the fields and breast cancer as a phrase in all of the fields. So my simple terms have been expanded and quite a broad and sensitive search has been produced by PubMed behind the scenes. Now, I might be quite happy with what it's done, or I might want to exercise more control. The search that it's carried out might be more sensitive than I want. So it's really important to be aware when you're doing a PubMed search, if you don't control the search, you might end up with unexpected results. If you don't mind that, then that's fine. You can make use of the automatic term mapping. But if you do want to be in control of where the terms are searched and how they're searched, then it helps to know a bit more about the PubMed interface, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start by looking at medical subject headings. Now, when I'm doing a Medline search, I nearly always start by looking for the mesh first, because when you look for mesh headings, it also introduces you to lots of other terms that you can make use of in other parts of your search. So when you are searching for the subject headings, you need to make use of a browser to help you find your way around the thesaurus. So the mesh subject headings are what's known as a controlled vocabulary. They're added to the records in PubMed by the indexers at the National Library of Medicine, and they are supposed to reflect the content of the record. And they're a controlled vocabulary because they offer one term to capture all sorts of term variants that we might use in the literature. So, for example, for breast cancer, the mesh heading is breast neoplasms, and that is used to capture records where people may have variously described breast cancer using terms such as breast cancer, breast carcinoma, and so on. So to begin, when you've got a new topic or a new search, you can typically look up the subject headings that might relate to your topic by using the mesh browser. And I've put the link here for the one that's actually within the NLM site and is in the same database grouping as PubMed. So I typed in breast cancer, and it offered me a series of terms that I could select, but I've chosen breast neoplasms as it seems to be the one that is most close to breast cancer. And I can tell that from what's called the scope note here, which describes what the term means. Using the mesh browser is helpful because it gives you lots of additional information about the subject indexing. And it also gives you additional information that can help you with developing your search strategy in the other fields in the PubMed and Medline records. So I'm focusing particularly here on the entry terms down here, where you can see all sorts of synonyms for breast neoplasms, and these terms you can use within your searches in the titles, the abstracts, and the author keywords. The other things that you need to be aware of are the little tick boxes. I'm not going to go into subheadings today, and I'm not really going to go into major topics, but I do want to highlight this option here, which is about turning on the explosion option. So I'm going to go on to the next slide where I'm going to explain explosion, but this is where you actually achieve explosion in when you're searching in the mesh browser. So further down this display, you come to the mesh trees, and the mesh trees show you the thesaurus in detail, and they're helpful because you should always check that the subject term you are planning to use doesn't have broader terms that might not also be useful, and also what are the more specific terms going to cover if you decide to use the explosion option. So here is breast neoplasms, and this shows you its position within the mesh tree, and there are two mesh trees in which breast neoplasms appear: breast diseases and neoplasms by site. If I search on breast neoplasms in PubMed, it will automatically, unless I turn it off, it will automatically explode, and what that means is it will search not only from this term, but it will search for all these more specific terms. So an exploded heading saves you time. It means you don't have to type in all of these headings or select all of these headings. However, it may not be the case that you don't always want all of these more specific headings, because you'll note, for example, in this list that we have male breast cancer as one of the more specific headings. And we also have lots of other headings, some of which may not be relevant to your particular question. So whenever you look at a mesh heading, if there are more specific terms below it, you need to review those and decide whether you want to get all of those or not. So explosion is a time-saving mechanism that means you type in or select one term and many others below it are selected. And explosion will happen as the default in Medline, in PubMed. If you don't want to explode a heading, you will need to turn off the explosion. And you do this by using this command, mesh : no exp. So you literally have to turn off explosion if you don't want it. Otherwise, headings will always be exploded. And the way you turn it off in the mesh browser is to tick this box here, which says do not include mesh terms found below this term in the mesh hierarchy. So when you're using the mesh browser, you can, as you look at the terms and you choose the terms that you want to include in your strategy, you can build your search over in the PubMed search builder on the right-hand side. So you can select terms, you can decide whether to explode them or not. And here I'm turning off the explosion. And you can add it to the search builder and it appears here. And then you can go and add additional terms and build up your mesh term strategy in this box before you launch it by clicking the search PubMed button. Over here, I'm showing you a sort of a slightly more expanded version of the search, where I've got the breast neoplasms not exploded, and I've included some additional terms that I do think I want from those more specific terms below breast neoplasms. I would carry on doing this until I had all of my breast cancer terms, and then I would click Search PubMed, and it would move the searches into the PubMed interface to run the search. The other reason why it's important to look at the mesh browser and to look at the notes for the headings in the mesh browser is to look out for previous indexing. Over time, the mesh thesaurus changes. New headings are introduced, headings are split up. It's on the move every year. And what this means is that headings, you may need to search for older headings as well as the current heading. So if we look at this heading, breast carcinoma in situ, we see it was introduced in 2017. So what that means is that before 2017, breast cancer in situ was indexed under other headings. And the headings that were used are listed here. So it's important to look at these and decide if you want to also add these to your strategy to pick up records that might not have been that were indexed with other terms in the past. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I'm moving next onto searching title, abstract, and author keywords. So are there any questions about mesh before I move on?
Yeah, we do have one question. So Megan's asked, can you unselect a specific term, or is it a blanket on and off, as in all subterms or no subterms?
Yeah, it's a blanket on and off. It's a toggle switch, really. Explosion or no explosion. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Megan. Any other questions?
Yes, so we've got one from Dominic. He's asked, please, how do you handle a situation where you're interested in some and not all the subheadings? As in, if you deactivate explosions, it limits all, but there's a case that you're interested in some.
Yeah, so that unfortunately, if I go back to the mesh trees, unfortunately, if you decide that you don't want breast neoplasms male, and maybe you don't want carcinoma lobular, what that means is that for the other 6 headings here, you would need to select them individually by typing them in. So you'd need to type in breast carcinoma in situ, carcinoma ductal breast, and these 4 as well to get that if you were turning explosion off, but you wanted some of these. So that's why explosion is a you know, it's basically a time-saving process. And as soon as you can't use it for whatever reason, then it means you do have to take a screenshot of these and then remember to search for each one in turn.
So you sort of manually add back the pieces you want back in. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly, Joanna. So that's what I've done here. Here I've got my unexploded main heading, And here are some of the more specific headings where I've had to look them up and add them in. And it is worth doing the looking up, because as you've seen with breast carcinoma in situ, there are, if I'm interested in records before 2017, I'm going to have to make sure I've got some other terms in there. Otherwise, I will miss records that that were indexed differently before 2017. So it's actually worth looking at each of the headings, because each heading has its own history that you need to be aware of.
That kind of gets to our next question, which is, would you routinely include older mesh terms that have been replaced or superseded in your strategy?
Yes, I think so, because otherwise you would miss those records. They haven't been, when a new heading is introduced, like breast carcinoma in situ, the National Library of Medicine does not go back and replace all of those older records with this new term. Those records are still, older records are still indexed with these headings.
Okay, so there's no sort of like bringing, it's not that everything gets updated continuously.
No, no, exactly. That's it, Joanna. Yeah, that's exactly right.
We've been asked, what happens when we explode a mesh term that doesn't have subheadings?
It just treats it
term.
Yeah, it just sorry, I'm trying to find one. Yeah. Yes, so breast carcinoma in situ has no lower terms. So even if you try to explode it, there's nothing to explode. So nothing happens. It just searches for breast cancer and carcinoma in situ.
So it'll just take that main category, but nothing bad will happen.
Nothing bad will happen. No, nothing bad will happen.
Speaking of bad things that can happen, we've been asked, in your experience, can you get in trouble with a reviewer if you don't explode? This questioner says, my scoping review is very specific and niche, so I selected specific mesh headings individually.
I think it's, as long as you've got a rationale for not exploding, then you can explain that in your search write-up, for example. So if you're doing a systematic review, you can either explain it in the methods section, or in your appendix where you're describing your search. You could say, I chose not to explode breast neoplasms, but to search for the following more specific terms individually, because exploding breast neoplasms introduced records that were not relevant. So I think you can explain that. I think it's okay to explain it.
That you have a rationale behind.
Exactly, Joanna. Yeah, exactly.
We've also been asked if it's possible to show this real time using the PubMed website. It sounds like you're going to get there. Is that right, Julie? That you're going to?
No, I can do that though. I think it's a good plan.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the mesh browser. I'm just going to show you very quickly what I did. So I'm typing in breast cancer. Can you see it offers me lots of terms involving breast, but fortunately for me, the one I'm really interested in is right at the top here. So I click on that and it shows me all of that information that I've shown you in the screenshots. So I would obviously check this one. As you'll see, this doesn't have any older indexing. So but it does obviously show me the headings. I know I don't want to explode it, so I'm clicking here, do not include mesh terms, add it to the search builder, and then I could go through working through these to find other specific headings that I want. I don't want to explode this either, but I want to add it to the search builder using OR, and I can carry on. Oh, it does explode. All right, okay. I can carry on working through the headings, adding more in.
But selectively.
Yeah, selectively. And always remember to get my Booleans right. So I can gradually build up my strategy. And then once I'm ready, I can click on Search PubMed. And it will go away and put it into PubMed. Okay, I'm going to move on in the interest of time and talk about restricting your searches to specific fields. So if I just go back, however, this is the sort of screen you're probably used to seeing when you do your searches in PubMed and you get the results. What I'm mostly going to show you next happens in the advanced search screen. So if you're not familiar with PubMed, what I'm going to demonstrate most in the next few slides is in the advanced search screen, which looks like this, where you have a drop-down box with the fields. You can enter your search terms here, and then you can build your queries here, and you can change the combinations that you're going to make with and, or, and not. You can type in term by term and then build up the strategy using and, or not. And you can also, using this show index, make sure that the terms you're entering actually do exist in the Medline index. But I'm going to talk about that all in a bit more detail. But I just wanted you to see the fact that there are two places where you can do the searches if you're not familiar with that. So obviously searching with the mesh terms is really important, but we want to search using additional options as well, because if we search only using mesh, we will run the risk of missing records. So we'll run the risk of missing records that haven't been indexed yet, records that may have been indexed but may not have, but by some chance may not have been indexed with the term we expect to be applied, and also we'll miss non-Medline records. So we need to search not just the mesh, but also other keywords, other fields. And you can do this in the advanced search builder. As soon as you specify the fields you want to search, it turns off the automatic term mapping that I mentioned earlier. So when you type in searches, for example, and you specify that it's going to be searched in the title field, this will turn off the automatic term mapping and the term will only be searched in the title field. So as I mentioned, you select your fields from the drop-down box, and on the screen here you can see the title. The show index can be used to help you to see that your search terms will actually find results. And the other fields that you might want to search are the TIAB combination. There is no way to search the abstract alone. So when you want to search the abstract, you actually have to search TIAB, title and abstract. We often find useful information in the author keyword field. So to search that, we would use the other term field, and the label for that is OT. And we should also routinely consider the supplementary concept field, which is labeled NM. Again, if you're typing a term in here with the supplementary concept here, you can click show index and it will show you if that word appears in the supplementary concept field. There are also two options to search groups of fields, and you should consider these sort of carefully depending on your search. So the first group of fields is the all fields option, and that's expressed by this the word all in square brackets after a search term. This will search all the terms, all the fields except for place of publication and the dates. And if you don't type any field tag, this is what will be searched by default. The other groups of field search is the text word search, and this searches things that are useful, like the title and the abstract and the mesh terms, but also things that might introduce noise to your search. So you need to think about whether it's helpful or not. So things like the corporate author and personal names. and also mesh subheadings. So you might want to weigh up, depending on your search, whether you want to use the all or the TW searches. The advantages of these options are that they're very sensitive and they save you time. You don't have to do a search for the TIAB and the OT and so on. So they can save you time, but they may also have disadvantages. They may be too sensitive and they may generate noise. So for example, if you use the TW and the all, it will explode the mesh headings, and you may not, as you've just seen, you may not want that to happen. They will also potentially find single words within compound mesh headings. And again, that may not be what you want to happen. And they may find words within the corporate author name, for example. So if you search for the word cancer, it might bring back records where it was the National Cancer Institute in the corporate author name. And also the subheadings that are attached to mesh, that can be attached to mesh headings, have very general terms in them. And sometimes if your search is also being run in the mesh subheadings, you may get a lot of noise because you're using your sense of the word prevention or control or organization or administration may be being used in a different sense than the mesh subheading sense. So I'm going to stop there briefly and see if there are any questions about searching titles and abstracts, author keywords.
Okay, so we do have a few questions here. The first is about the differences between using and or, so your Boolean operators, and how much would the searcher include or not if we type one or the other. I know you talked a bit about this, but do you have additional resources that you liked for learning more about using Boolean operators?
So the thing to remember about the Boolean operators is that one of them makes the results smaller, and one of them makes the results larger. So the Boolean and will always make things smaller. It requires that if you have two terms, it requires that both of the terms must appear in the record. So whenever you use an and, you will know that your results are getting smaller. So usually we use and to combine two different concepts. So if we're interested in the economics of breast cancer, we would combine breast cancer and economics, because those are two different concepts and we want the records to have both of those concepts in them. When we use or, we make things bigger. Or means I want this as well as this as well as this. It makes things grow. So we use or typically within a single concept. So that's what you can see at the bottom here. We can see all of our breast cancer concepts are being grouped together with or to make sure that the concept has as many relevant records as possible before we then combine it with some other concept using and. So if you think about or as a string, creating a string of pearls, the or is what you would always use to bring terms to specify terms within a single concept. And then once you have a second concept, an unrelated topic, such as economics or RCTs, then you would and that second concept with this first concept that you've been building up using your ors. I hope that helps.
That makes sense. Thank you. We've got another question about exporting records of your search strategy or your process for including your files in reports. Do you mind showing us the best way to export a record of your search strategy or what you searched? Yeah,
I will do that next, a bit later on, Joanna, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to do exporting a bit later.
Okay, we're ahead. Yeah. Let me see if there's any more questions from this bit. Can you speak a little bit more on the search index option? Can you explain a little more about what that is and how it works?
Yeah. So this is it's really important to know that PubMed makes what it, the PubMed has a built-in index which you can access for each of the fields, which you can access using the show index command here. So if I wanted to search in the title for breast cancer, and I wasn't sure that that search term was in the database, I can click on show index and it reassures me that actually this is a term, and there are quite a few records with that term in it. And also I can look down and see other variants that I might not have thought about, and I could think about searching for those potentially. These are more specific than breast cancer alone. So the index shows you the words that Medline has indexed for each of the fields. So you can see that in the title field there is 218,000 records. If I look at that in the author keyword field, it should be lower. You can see there's only 80,000. So you can see that the value of searching different fields, because these numbers add up. Okay, I'm going to carry on if that's okay, Joanna.
That's fine. Go on.
Okay, thanks for the questions, everyone. I'm going to move on to phrase searching now. What I've just shown you, the index, means that that all of the phrases that we might want to search have to be in the mesh index to work. So you might think, well, when I say a phrase, I expect the software to go away, find me the first word, find me the second word, and then find me those records where those words are together. Now, to a large extent, PubMed does do this, but you may sometimes find that there is a phrase, even though it will exist in PubMed, that isn't in their index. This might sound bizarre, but is the case. So most of the phrases we'll type in will work as phrases and we will get results, but sometimes you won't get results and you need to know what to do when that happens. So one of the ways to test for phrases is to look in that show index. The other is to run the search and see what happens. And what happens is, depending on how you express the phrase, different things will happen with the results. So here I've got a phrase that I know is not indexed, child breast cancer. And if I search with it as a typical phrase enclosed by quotes, it will give me no results. There are actually those phrases in there, but they're not been indexed. So what PubMed does is it checks the phrase index. It doesn't find that in its phrase index, and it says no results. I can search by restricting the phrase to the title and abstract fields. If I do this, PubMed will process this information in a different way. It will say there is no phrase, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for child, breast, cancer, and then I'm going to AND those terms together. So what that does is it creates quite a more sensitive search than if a genuine phrase search had been achieved, but it does actually run the search, whereas it doesn't with this first one. And then a third way to present phrases is to put hyphens instead of spaces. And if you do that, then it won't give you any results. So if you're at all uncertain about phrase searching, it's probably best to think about using this type of option, because at least you'll run a search, even though it won't be a genuine phrase search. However, phrase searches are now more possible because PubMed has introduced proximity searching. So in this example here, you can see I'm searching the title and abstract, for this phrase, cognitive impairment in multiple sclerosis. Now, what I've hit show index, and what it's showing me is that there is no phrase in the index for this. Therefore, when I try to search for this, I will get no results. Well, actually, no, I'll get the cognitive and impairment and multiple and sclerosis, which is probably not what I really want. So now, since PubMed has introduced proximity searching in the past year, we can now force a phrase search by using the proximity operator and a 0. So if you type in a phrase and it doesn't appear in the show index, you can use this alternative approach now. You can type your phrase with the double quotes, and then you can use this proximity operator approach to force a phrase search. So what you have here in this square box is it tells it to search the title and the abstract. This is a colon. This is a tilde symbol, and this is a 0. What it's saying is, find me this phrase in the title and abstract field. So this is a way that's just become available more in past year to enable us to genuinely achieve a phrase search, even when it's not in the PubMed index. Any questions about phrase searching? Okay, I'm going to move on. Truncation is when you use a symbol to search for terms that begin with a particular word stem. So the truncation symbol, there is only one truncation symbol in PubMed, it's just the asterisk, and that covers 0, 1 or more additional letters. So it's very sensitive as a truncation symbol. You can use truncation in phrases, but you can only use it on the last term. So the example I've got here is breast cancer, where I can only truncate the cancer word because that's the second one. As with searching in fields, truncation turns off the automatic term mapping within PubMed. So what this means is you will get exactly what you search. It won't go away and do all of the extrapolations of the search to find lots of other synonyms and so on. And probably the most crucial thing to remember is that you need at least 4 characters for the truncation to work. If you truncate based on 3 characters, it's not going to work. And it's also bad practice anyway to truncate really short. But you need at least 4 characters before you begin the truncation. Any questions about truncation?
I think we're okay.
Okay, that's good.
That's clear.
Okay, so proximity searching. We've seen how proximity searching can help us to force PubMed to do a proper phrase search. It will also be useful for searching for words that are nearer to each other, but not right next to each other. So proximity searching works only in 3 fields: the title field, the TIAB field, the title abstract field, and the affiliation field. The affiliation field is the author's address. The proximity searching operator looks for words that appear in either order, any order, within a specified distance from each other. And the way you construct your search is to specify your terms and then follow those terms with the square brackets, the field code, which is T, TIAB or AF, a colon, a tilde, and then the number of words that you want to separate your search terms. I've put 2 here, so 2 search terms here. You can have any number of search terms, or you can have more than 2 search terms if you want to make sure that you've got terms that are appearing near each other. Truncation symbols are ignored. So if you truncate, if you introduce truncation into this, it will just be ignored. It won't actually work. So what this means is, if you're worried that there may be term variants or singular and plural forms of a word, you need to repeat your proximity search with that second variant included. So you need to run more than one proximity search. So over here on the right, we've got some examples. Here I'm searching for the word breast and the word cancer within 4 words of each other in the title or the abstract. So here we've got some typical examples of results. Here we have breast, which is in a list of conditions, a list of places where cancer can occur, and the word cancer is quite a way away from breast. So this is useful. This shows you one of the uses of proximity operators. It lets you find occasions like this where phrase searching would miss a relevant record. And in this case, we have the terms in the reverse order. We have cancer first, and we have breast following it, and we have 3 words in the middle. The important thing to know with proximity searching is that the stop words, these are the common words in the database, such as of and the, that typically don't appear in searches, do count in the proximity search. And it's possible to build quite complex searches using proximity searches in combination with Boolean searches. So I was mentioning earlier about using AND to combine concepts. Here we've got records that are about standard care combined with hip arthroplasty. Any questions about proximity searching?
We do have a couple of questions here. We have lots of general questions, which I'm going to hold off on until the end, if that's okay, just so that we make sure that we get through all of the main content. But 2 questions specifically about proximity searching, which I think are sort of overlapped and get to the same thing, are: when would proximity searching be useful? When would you use it, and when would you not? How do you make decisions about using proximity searching?
Yeah, proximity searching is important and helpful, because if you just search with and, one of the words, if we're searching for breast and cancer, the word breast could be in the first sentence of the abstract, and the word cancer could be in the last sentence of the abstract. And they might, even though they're both in the record, they may not be actually related in a meaningful way. What proximity searching lets you do is it lets you look for words that are quite close together and therefore likely to be related to each other in a meaningful way. Likewise, phrase searching insists that words are next to each other and in the right order, whereas we've seen from my examples that words may be related, but they may not actually be next to each other. Yeah. And what proximity searching lets you do is to make that sort of account for that type of issue where words are not close together, not as close together as they could be, but are close together in a meaningful way. So it makes the search, proximity searching is more precise than Boolean ands and less precise than phrase searching. So it just depends on where you're placing your emphasis on sensitivity or precision, and also just what you see in the records. If you see lots of lists of different cancers where your cancer might actually be separated from its location, then phrase searching is going to miss records like this, and you would probably be better off with proximity searching.
So proximity searching allows you to look for things that are conceptually related, but might not form a phrase together necessarily. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on, Joanna, in order to cover everything. So I just wanted to talk about creating saved searches because particularly if you're doing systematic reviews, you might find it helpful to save your search and rerun it, or to save search filters that you use a lot and rerun them. So to create saved searches, you will need to have a login. Logins are free. You set them up once and then they're there for good. Set up a login by clicking on the login button from the home PubMed screen. And then once you've created a login, you get access to what they call the dashboard. And what you can do in this dashboard is you can save searches. You can also edit your saved searches. You can create collections of records. So these might be records on a particular topic that you decide you want to keep within PubMed. You can create filters. So these are like search filters to find particular types of study, perhaps. And then these filters are made available in the main part of PubMed for your personal use. And you can also create bibliographies. So just recommending this if you regularly find you want to save your searches and come back to them. You don't have to type them all in again. And also if you've got filters that you want to use on a regular basis. So to save your searches, in this first slide, I've saved an economics search filter. I've created it in the search builder, the advanced search builder, and then here is my final results. And once I've got my search in this final box, I can click on Create Alert to save it. When you click on Create Alert, you get this, this set of options. You can give your saved search a name, and I've named it after the filter that it is. And then here is my actual search. And then you can, if you want to, you can set up like a current awareness or an SDI email. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. So I've turned that off here. And what that just means is I've just got a saved search and it will sit there waiting for me to select it at some point. So if I look at my dashboard again, I can now see my filter is in my saved searches, and I can edit it and I can run it again from here. Down here, you can see the filters option, and I've put in the slide how you create a filter. Basically, you just follow the command. You can copy the filter you have in here, which is what I've done, and then you can follow these commands, and you will end up with something saved here. And then in your main PubMed screen, this is my search, my personal search filter. This only appears on my screen when I'm logged in. And what it means is I can run a search. Here's a breast cancer search, not a very good one. And this brings up 347,000 results. If I wanted to focus down onto the papers that are likely to be economic studies, I can click on the economics filter and it will bring the results down to 10,000. I haven't done it here, but I can just click on that and it will work. So this is very useful if you're regularly using things like the RCT filter or a safety filter or any other filter that you use a lot. You can have it built in and ready to go without having to type it in. Any questions about saved searches and filters?
I think we're set.
Okay. So this is the final slide. So this is about exporting results. Apologies to the inquirer who's waited this long to get to the end. So there are various ways that you can export your results from your search results. I'm just going to go back to PubMed. So these options are accessed from here: save, email, and send to. So the things I'm going to describe are all accessed from these three buttons. So you can export results as a file using the save option, that first option. And you can produce tagged output that you can load into bibliographic software. You can export just the PubMed IDs, which is useful for loading into things like citation searches. You can download just the abstract, or brief information, no abstract, in CSV format that you could load into Excel. You can also save the results for the future, or keep it within your dashboard by using the send results command. So you can save it to the clipboard and copy it to somewhere else, or you can save it to my bibliography or the collections in the dashboard that I've been showing you. You can also save the results by using the send results option as an NBib file, which will load into bibliographic software. And you can also email the results to yourself or somebody else as a printable file by using by specifying the abstract format. So there's quite a lot of flexibility in exporting the results, and depending on where you want the file to end up and how you want to use it, there are plenty of different options, I think, to get results out. Okay, I'm going to stop there and we can take some final questions.